Brenton.
Whitten, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, my friend. Good to see you.
Good to see you, mate.
What's going on in your neck of the woods, mate? What are you drinking today? Listen, I had your voice in my bloody head. I still got leftovers from last week, and I went to reach for it, and I just had you on my shoulder. Whitten, you can't drink that, so I had to open another bottle. Now I'm going to have 2 bottles in my shelf.
But you won't feel like you're waking up poisoned, and that's the main thing.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Well, I've got a nice Malbec here from Argentina.
Nice.
This was in the kind of like the special bin down the bottle, but I've heard a Malbec's nice. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
La Moraes. Anyway, it tastes fantastic.
Yeah,
better than 7-day-old wine. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's probably slightly better for you than 7-day-old wine too.
No
sound.
Oh, we've got a bit of no sound there.
Oh,
let me see.
Let me know if that's the same for the rest of you. James, you were on early with the afternoon fellas. Can you just let us know whether you can hear us there?
Yeah, let us know, folks, in the chat. There's a few of you guys on there now. I can see a few. Give us a shout out in the chat if there's a sound issue. Maybe DJ could be at your end, or it could be at our end. Let's see. Facebook sound is okay, James. Maybe DJ at your end, mate. You can hear us loud and clear. Okay, sorry, mate. Can't help you from a tech point of view, but good luck. Hopefully, you can.
we can tell him that maybe we could switch to another channel, but we need sign language of some sort, mate. We'll need to write to him.
Indeed. All good here. Well, mate, welcome, folks. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us for another Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Andy's been out and about. He's actually been able to partake in a little bit of outdoor activity this afternoon. You can see his eyes a little bit red there. He's been out kite surfing. There it is.
Look at them.
It hasn't
been. Like I've been doing something else, doesn't it?
Something else, but good to see all of you guys jumping on right now. Fantastic. You can join us on a fabulous Friday afternoon, have a nice glass of wine and debrief the week. Few things going on out there, Andy, this week. You and I, for part of the week, were away. Folks, as many of you guys know, you're in, some of you guys are already in the K2 Mastermind program. Andy and I spent a few days this week hanging out with some amazing people and doing some learning and some teaching, which was awesome. Yep. And Alison said, Andy, you're not out rioting tonight. So no, Alison, he's got a better date. It's with us. So, it's after a few wines, he might get fired up though. You never know.
we have to move things around the calendar to suit Alison. So sometimes other things take priority. JD's back with us, and
he's back. He's back on track, which is good. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, which is awesome.
Well, mate, before we get started, because Andy's had a hairy. I'm assuming she's talking about you, mate.
No, well, did you have a haircut, Andy? No, I think he's just combed it, Michelle. I think it just, thanks for asking.
This is what you can still tell because the sideburns are about 7 or 8 centimeters long. But after curly-haired people go into the salt water, the hair stiffens up, and for one day we can comb our hair without any product and actually look like you sexy blokes who have straight hair who can just go and whack it into shape. It's
all slick back, mate.
It's one of the amazing things about being in the water. If I do pass out at any point in time or fall off my chair, it's not because I'm drunk. It's just because that hour and a half on the water has absolutely beaten the living bejesus out of me, using muscles that I haven't used for almost 2 years now with lockdown.
There you go.
But, a big question for you, Jace, before we get started. I know that you're a big sports fanatic, so you'll understand that it's a public holiday down here in Melbourne.
Yep.
So, mate, being the savant of all sports and newly proclaimed sports commentator, I'd love to know your thoughts on who's going to win the grand final tomorrow.
Mate, tell me who's playing and I'll have a guess. Yeah, certainly not my sport, folks, that one, but I do know there's a public holiday down your way, Andy. Have you got a tip either way, mate? Who are you backing?
Mate, I'm backing football. It's Melbourne and the Doggies.
Yes.
I'd genuinely love to see the Doggies get up for a good mate of ours, Richard Myers, and a couple of others who are avid Doggy supporters. But by the same token, it's been a long time between drinks for Melbourne. So, mate, I think that football will be the winner, even though it's being played over in WA this time. But you know what? It'll be great you've got to have grand finals played with spectators. And
yeah, it's nice to do that, isn't it? Yep.
absolutely. So it's just great to see two Melbourne teams in the grand final, ones that haven't worn the or kissed the cup for quite a few years. Might even be multiple decades. I'm not quite sure. So it's just great to see them both up there. So one will go home sad and more hungry for the next year. But mate, my heart says Doggies, and my brain says the Demons, Melbourne. So, mate, I'm a bit split, but we'll see what happens.
There you go. For you sports fans out there, yep.
One of us has no idea, and the other one has no idea.
Yes, indeed. Well, there you go. All right. Well, let's roll into it then, Andy. Folks, thanks for joining us. We've got a fair few online now, which is awesome. A few of you guys know how we roll. Well, we try to roll anyway on a Friday night. And Andy Fenton over there. Jason Witten here. Property and finance, the world of shares and property meets. We started these conversations over, almost 18 months ago, 2 years ago now, and we've continued them. We've actually enjoyed a Friday wine, and some of you guys have enjoyed one or two wines as well, which is kind of nice. But we get a chance to decompress from the week, but also debrief the week from the world of real estate, the world of the share market and finance, and share a little bit of what we know, and hopefully it's of value to you guys, and we can support our communities along the way. How we like to roll, we try to keep it on track. The things that we do is we try to do a little bit of, hey, what's in the news, and that's kind of nice if we can debrief some of the interesting conversations and headlines that we see out there in the world of misinformation when it comes to our stuff. But, but also there's a few things we believe you should know, and we like to dive into that stuff as well. And I've got a few of those tonight, some pretty interesting things I think we should know. And absolutely 100%. Sounds like I've had too much to drink already. We'd love to hear your questions. And if you've got questions, chuck them in the chat. Folks, love to have your engagement, interaction tonight on what we're up to, which would be super fabulous. So, that's how we try and roll, Andy, and we try and get things going. But I might give it a little kickoff this week. I've got a few things prepared.
Just before you do, mate,
yeah.
I'll just throw one over the
Chuck one over the fence, Andy.
I think this one's really important for everybody, specifically you and I. So let me just bring this one up on the screen. Here we go. Mate, so just before we get going on the night, I think that you and I better watch out because the regulator's onto us. Maybe on maybe not.
Don't bring that our way, Andy.
Was warned social media fueled stock pumpers may face jail or fines of up to $1 million.
Yes.
So there you go, mate. So just for everyone's clarity, we're not a stock pumper. just to disabuse anybody from that notion. But it was interesting, mate, because this was something that you and I were actually chatting about on the weekend before this came up.
Yes.
I'd flicked you a couple of ads from Facebook of people using the Financial Review in their Facebook ads and things like that, doing some reasonably unscrupulous type of things.
Passing off, as they say. Yeah, misleading and passing off. Yeah.
So as a bit of a funny start off for this, obviously we're not part of it, but maybe we should watch what we say, Jace. We won't pump anybody's tires up. Maybe we'll just kick them. But a good reminder for everybody to again choose the news that you look at carefully, because if it's just a source, well, you don't know where it came from. So it needs to be a trusted source, because there are a lot of these pump and dump schemes out there, and they're only looking after their number one interest. But not us, Jason. So we're not the bull, we're not the Teletubby with the red one on there. But this is exactly the kind of stuff that you and I try and disabuse the notions of, or at least provide some clarity around. So, And I thought,
Well, Andy, you and I have talked about this in our worlds, and folks, anyone who's thinking of choosing an advisor, someone who's going to help them, at the end of the day, folks, there's a few ways to go about this stuff, and Andy, for a minimum of protection for somebody, you need to check out people's ability to be licensed and qualified to do what they do. That's at a minimum. I feel strongly in the real estate space, not only should they be qualified and licensed, but also have some personal experience in the investment they're talking about as well. But, at the end of the day, what I do see, and you and I have seen this on the social media world, the idea that, you can get away with blue murder, unlicensed, financial advice. And you and I, basically we would be in jail if we did what those people were doing. Basically that's what could happen. And I'm actually quite happy that this is the case. And if they follow through, ASIC, then great. It clean up some of this stuff that, is behind the veil, and causing quite a lot of people some, financial distress. I think it's a good thing, Andy. I'm actually a big fan of it, and I've got a little bit of something over my neck of the woods that's like this as well. So, in my my what's in the news, what's going on, let's have a bit of a look at this one, because it might be quite interesting, Andy. And it's funny how great minds think alike, huh? You and I talked about this as well. For great financial advisors like yourself, the rhetoric around the compliance, is onerous. It's insane and expensive. And on the flip side, it's sort of like saying, hey, listen, it's not a nanny state here. Good financial advisors will do their utmost to make sure that they get it right. But certainly as investors, you got to take a little bit of responsibility yourself. So I'm heartened by this, Andy. You and I have talked about it. We 100% believe good financial support for every Australian is an essential. I think it's great for our country as well, because at the end of the day, if we can have the majority of Australians at least partially or fully self-funded in their retirement, that takes the weight off the economy and gives plenty of excess capital for the economy to reinvest in this country. I like that idea. I'm a big fan of it. And financial planners make up a very large part of that, future for people. So this is heartening for me. I'm pretty happy about that, Andy. What do you think on that side of the fence? That, as a planner yourself and that professional, it's been pretty onerous for a few years, multiple years.
Well, and I think I've said it with you a number of times, is, governments come in, they over-regulate, they under-police.
Yes.
They over-regulate and under-police, and then they crack the shits because they say, well, nobody's following the laws. It's because nobody knows what the fuck the laws are. You've changed them that many times. And ultimately, when it really comes down to the crunch, and I'm talking about things like West Point, things about the timber schemes of the 2000s, these ones which are prime life, these companies that were allegedly sort of fraudulent, but never saw their proper court date, and big payouts to KPMGs of the world, and these or the auditors. Sorry, not KPMG. I won't use names. It's all public anyways. They're all out in the Fin Review. So large out of court settlements, and ASIC's really nowhere to be seen. And this is the stuff which hurts people. Yeah. But then they over-regulate, and they pass the regulations on, scare the living Jesus out of everyone, and put handcuffs on. So Joe talks some sense here, where effectively there's you don't go to a mechanic and then understand how to tune your car. Like there's certain things that you need to know, and there's certain things that you just can't. And the same thing is which happens with doctors. You go in for surgery, you need to know the risks, but you don't need to know how to perform the surgery. Yes. And financial advice has almost gotten to a stage where the onus is on us to be able to educate the clients how to perform surgery, rather than just understanding the risks. And
that's a great analogy. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what Joe's saying here. He's saying that, and you can see it there. Take some responsibility. There has to be some uncommon sense or some common sense where investors, if they want to play the game, that they do have to at least take on some responsibility and hopefully. But at the moment, it's all lip service, Jace, and so it's talk. Let's see whether Joe walks the talk. But as we said previously, is that governments overregulate and then they realize they've gone too far and they're going to destroy an industry. And if they need the industry, then they have to let it go. And the beauty about that is that it does clean out a lot of the riffraff. I don't like it. It's not fun. It's terrible going through that. It's not the point of that exercise. You could do it better and in ways that create less pain and heartache for everyone involved. But one of the benefits of overregulation is that it really does sort the wheat from the chaff, but it also
cleans it out a little. Yeah.
It also gets some of the good players out as well, and they never want to come back. And then it takes a number of years to reignite the industry. But you get over that hurdle, Jason. You and I have seen that a few times in our life. Then you got clean runs in front of you, and then you can really do something because then they'll stay off your case for 10 or 20 years. And like politics, like anything, if you get a long run at things, then you can make some really good changes in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I like that. And hopefully that's where we're headed with this world. You and I are passionate about it. And, it's overdue. That's for sure. Yeah.
Go, Joe.
Yeah, go, Joe. Well, folks, if you have any questions, make sure you whack them in the chat for Andy and I as we sort of do a little bit of, debriefing the news. But this one's a kind of a good sort of touchy-feely for all of us. Crew, gang, check this out. In the last 6 months, alone, house prices have lifted by $1 trillion in Australia. $1 trillion.
That is insane.
It is crazy times right there. And Andy, that's the fastest growth to personal wealth in over a decade for Australians. And, it was actually a bit of a flat time. And personally, I personally like, as a property investor and a property investment advisor and coach, I don't like boom times. Boom times teach the uneducated, the unseasoned. Is it unseasoned or in-seasoned? Unseasoned investor that this is how it's always going to be. And right now, folks, this is a once in a lifetime. This is a once in a lifetime convergence of a number of things that you probably couldn't even, magically concoct with a magic wand for a very special moment in, time for real estate prices. I say make hay while the sun shines, folks, but we will have a contraction after expansion. The real estate market in recent 100-year history doesn't go down as far as it went up. It contracts a little. It overshoots. It overprices itself because of overzealous buyers, often by between 10 and 20%, Andy. And so it overshoots its true market value based on, you and I do mathematics based on affordability and cash flows and interest rates and stuff like that. And you're like, people can't afford it, but they paid too much. That will happen. I think that'll happen sort of late 2004, 2005. Personally, I think that's when it'll occur. Yeah. But we have had some rumbles this week. There's 2 articles out. CBA has talked about tightening servicing criteria. And you and I were talking about them sort of being unshackled, but repealing those APRA laws didn't occur because interest rates went down so far, right?
Jace, I saw the exact opposite. I saw 4 articles, the exact opposite, with the banks pleading to release the shackles and make and alleviate the responsibilities that relate to the serviceability calculations. And
you got to me just before I was going to say, but I reckon that one's the gecko tail, folks. Because I'm like, that's bullshit. The banks have been hamstrung for years, and they don't come out like, So they're basically saying in a public statement, which they won't follow through on, we'll tighten it up a bit, Nobody come and regulate us. And Andy, you and I know the number one risk to investment, and we've done this, right? Everyone thinks they know what it is. Folks, put it in the chat right now. Do you guys
What
know
do you
what
think
the
it is?
what is the number one risk to people's wealth in this country? And it's probably worldwide. What's the number one risk to people's wealth in Australia that you are exposed to that you might not understand? It can be the make and break of people's financial livelihoods, but every Australian is exposed to this. Hey, Bob, you are all over it like a rash. Boom. Politicians, folks. Politicians. We can be smart and we can be clever and we can be strategic and we can be tactical. But if we've got stupid, idiot politicians and government policy that's shit, then that hurts. It really has an impact. Changes you have no control over, Alison. Dead right. And Andy, you were telling, and I love this story. Andy does a bit of stuff with our mentoring clients, folks, and he talks about over a 20-year period. Andy, how many changes have been? Is it 20 years or like? Yeah, there you go. 7 changes in
8.
8 changes. Put my fucking glasses on. Like, how many fingers has he got up?
It's because you do 3 like that. I do 3 like that. You do 3 like that.
Mate, well, there you go. Is that is that German or European anyway? There you go.
No.
8 changes in superannuation
changes to laws that intersect with superannuation, directly intersect with superannuation. 8 changes since 1999 for a 20-year period. And that included a GFC that was in there. So the GFC happened, but the regulation, most of it actually happened on the lead up to. There was less that happened on the flip side for that 20-year sample.
Well, there you go. One change every 3.1 years or something. Right? Like, how's that, folks? We're trying to do a 15 to 20 year plan minimum, maybe a 20 to 30 year wealth plan to really lock this thing away. 8 bloody changes, and that's the challenge, team. That's the challenge, folks. That's why you must have someone like Andy in your corner when it comes to navigating these changes. Someone who's great in that space, because shiver me timbers, these politicians can fuck around with it.
You've got to pilot your way through it, and it's okay while we're working and while we've got good working in front of us, because we've got a runway and we can adapt and we can change, and we mightn't like it, but we'll just do it, right? But once you retire, and now taking into consideration that the retirement age quasi is sort of 65, 67, somewhere around there, and now we're living longer, so that we're now facing retirement with uncertainty of 8 to 9 potential changes of laws that relate to your retirement savings over a period of time. And so that's kind of scary, mate. That's just the legislation that impacts just purely on the vehicles that you're using to invest, right?
The superannuation
benefits, superannuation. It doesn't take into consideration the magnitude of other laws that get changed, like restrictions on banks and all of these other things, which have a massive effect, huge effect on investment markets, which they're invested in. So I'd argue, Jace, that number, you could double it, maybe even triple it, and say major changes to policies. And I'll say allegedly at the moment, because I haven't done the research, but my bet would be it would be somewhere in the vicinity of almost 30 major things that would impact on your total investment portfolio over a 20-year period.
Yeah,
now, that's insane. That's more than the years that exist.
And how do you navigate through that, folks? Well, you navigate through with great people like Andy. For these things, you can. Well, one door closes, another door opens. But as we roll. But I've got a little question here. Graham's all over it. We love a bit of the Kerry Packer. Start repealing a few laws before they make new ones. Dead right. Graham. You know, at the end of the
Graham,
day,
I reckon they don't actually know all of the laws that they would need to repeal. There's that many bloody laws that sit underneath the laws that they're making. They wouldn't actually know what the root cause of the laws were, and that's one of the challenges. But I totally agree. Big
one
pack
of the challenges.
here.
Well, this is mind-boggling, Andy. $1 trillion in 6 months, and I reckon we still got a little bit of momentum going in our market. And folks, you've heard me talk about it, Andy, Sam. The people in our networks. This is make hay while the sun shines stuff. But Andy, we're not the only country in the world receiving this type of uplift in our real estate game. We are. We're one of many, and have a little guess, Andy. What? And folks, tell me, I think it was out of 15. I've got the score here. I forgot to check what it was. Have a little guess. Where are we on the list out of the top 15 capital growth, average capital growth countries around the world? Where does Australia sit? And tell me, folks, who's number one? Which country in the world is number one for capital growth? What do you reckon?
Is it all Western? Is it all Western, or are we talking about
it's worldwide? It's worldwide, and in COVID times. Well, I think it's worldwide anyway. But anyway, I should have set my questions up a little bit better. But anyway, tell me, folks, where do you reckon we sit out of 15?
I reckon personally, we'd be top 5.
Top 5. Yeah.
And possibly even top 3. The US would have to be up there because they've gone through a massive price acceleration. Oh God. Number 1.
Graham's bullish as he's like, we're number one. Yep, number 12, Bob reckons. China there. All right, well, let's have a little look at this, Andy. I'm just going to skip to that right there and check this out. The Knight Frank Global House Price Index.
New Zealand. Of course. That was the one I was looking for.
Look at New Zealand go, folks. It is crushing it. US, Andy, you got it there. US is up there, number 3. And Turkey, of all places. Check that out.
I would have gotten that in a million years. But
no, I would.
I'd move to Turkey right about now, mate. I wouldn't mind sitting down, having a sheesh pipe and living the land of the free. Because, ostensibly, it's quite open in Europe at the moment. It's very, very open in Europe. And because of, and hopefully I'm not cutting in here, places like Slovakia, Sweden, less so Luxembourg, but the Netherlands, Russia, Poland, there's been a great repatriation back to the home state because of work from home. So a lot of these, the Eastern Bloc countries, some of the best minds come out of them. For Slovakia, Poland, and I'm not just saying that because my partner's Polish. They're incredible minds in London and in New York and so on and so forth. But now they're all being allowed to go back home. So they're taking their money, pounds and their US dollars, and they're able to go home, and they're going home en masse.
Arbitrage, Andy. Arbitrage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's like lifestyle or financial arbitrage. And it's probably a combination of both, same sort of thing. They've earned US dollars and they go home to where they are, and that US dollar buys 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times the lifestyle where they want to be. Yeah. And it's a really interesting one. New Zealand, folks, what an interesting place New Zealand is. I've got a little bit of news about New Zealand in a minute, but check out that stuff there. And we've got a little question from Rosita. Andy, Evergrande, very big Chinese property developer, collapsing or on the verge of. Any thoughts in and around that? Do you think it might knock on to the Oz market? I've got an opinion on that one.
Look, there's some sensationalist headlines out there that this is going to cause the next GFC number 2. China's transparency is so poor that it's really hard to actually gain any full insight into the legitimacy of what's actually happening there.
Yeah.
So it's actually not even really on my radar at the moment. I'm aware of it. We know what's going on with it. I could make your head spin if I told you some of the stuff that's gone on in Chinese property developments over the years. The ghost cities, the 7,000% per year investment returns on property portfolios. But ultimately, it's highly government regulated, and people get shot and people get put into jail for very long periods of times over there. So at the moment, it's on my radar. The potential flow-on effects from it. Look, I don't know at this stage. I think that should there be major challenges with it, the Chinese will have an interesting way of being able to get out of it. And at the moment, it's just not on my radar, so I don't have enough research to really comment too much on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Rosita, it was, I don't know whether it was intentional or accidental. Andy, it was over 5 years ago now. The Australian government decided that it didn't want, the overseas investor inflating the Australian property market. Pull it. You got a Hemi pulling there. You got.
I felt like one of my abs just launched itself out of my body,
cramping up. Oh, jeez. But the Australian regulators and the Australian government decided that it didn't want the arbitrage of other nations investing as aggressively in Australia as they once did. It was actually quite a good stimulus for Australia for quite a while, money flowing into Australia, but they said no. So we have had we've had about 5 years with that financial flow being pretty well non-existent in Australia, and I think that from a two-way flow, I don't think that's going to knock on into Australia at all, Rosita. And probably the only place potentially, Andy, might be, indirectly, maybe a small amount of less, imports from Australia, maybe iron or something like that. But I just don't see it, to be honest. I just don't see that would be in any way, shape or form. Folks, you just can't fathom like 1 billion people in comparison to Australia, 25 million. The scope is just the scope is just insane. And in China, myself and Sam have traveled there once or twice and talked to developers in China. It's all completely 100% government regulated. Like, it's regulated. You get told who you're going to give the glass contract to. It's not a free market. Like, no. And you have to, if you are the developer, you have to build over there because the government released that land, whether anyone's buying them or not, right? It is so different. It's so vastly economically different to Australia's development economic policy. When it comes to real estate, it's not even the same. So, good question, Rosita. I've had it pop up a few times. I think the media likes to sort of sink its teeth into things and, misrepresent them. Maybe, I don't know. But, I can't see it worrying Australia right now. And
well, look, mate, on my side, there's not a single one of our managers that are looking at it. As I said, it's not really on my radar. I read a few articles in and around it, and I just thought, oh, that's another bloody sensationalist headline that's saying there's next Lehman Brothers. It's not even in the same gig. The stuff that was happening in the GFC was a toxic spread. It was financial coronavirus.
Yeah,
the GFC and collateralized debt obligations and things of that nature. And part of the reason why it was so bad is because nobody actually knew what the number was.
No. And Andy, you and I have talked about this, like the concept of like zombie economics, right? There's this stimulus that's controlled by governments or, institutions or, misinformation that then perpetuates, products and companies and things that just wouldn't exist in the open market. No one would use them. They wouldn't be consumed. They're like, well, nobody wants coal. If someone rocked around to your house tomorrow and said, Andy, mate, here, tick the box. You want coal-fired electricity that's going to ruin the planet, or you want solar electricity? no one would tick coal. It would be insane. Like, well, maybe 5% of the country. But, those things
Will the
are
coal
interesting.
installers, will they ruin my roof? Just as a quick question. That's
But it's that sort of stuff, right? It's like you don't know what's going on, right? It's interesting. Michelle, we both know Michelle, and she's very successful when it came to producing and manufacturing stuff out of China. But here you go, like this is someone who run a very successful manufacturing company. You have to provide your formulas to the government. Folks, I can't. Allegedly, the Chinese government took away what was his name, the Alibaba guy for 3 months, and repatriated his opinions and behavior. Like it's a different kettle of fish, folks. So let's not go down there, Andy, because we don't want to be shut down by. Moving on. Moving on. Mate reckons, Andy, you need to stop drinking because your liver's packing it in. So watch out. And and Graham's got into a fitness regime. Oh, ring barking. Graham, mate, shivers. I used to do that with my uncle out on the farm. Used to have to make fence posts out of the iron barks out there, ring bark them first and whatever, knock them over. Anyway, it's probably not very PC, is it? Chopping trees down. But there you go.
Well, mate, when they regrow, they actually consume more carbon in the regrowth of a coppice tree than what they do in maturity. So that's there. And Nate, no, thanks for that. I reckon it was probably the harness of the kite surfing harness that's just exploded my spleen in there. It's ladies and gentlemen, it's probably not the best idea to go out in 35 knots when you haven't been out on the water for 2 years. It's probably not the smartest thing to do.
You're not as young as you used to be, Fenton. You're not as young as you used to be, mate. You can't just come off the couch and just smash out 35 knot winds in the kite. Well, I got a couple of other things here, which we were talking about the other day, Andy, when it comes to some interesting things. Check this out. This one based on the back of, New Zealand being number 2. I remember number 2 and number 3. Check this out. Amazon is going to invest $7.5 billion in data centers in Auckland. Andy's talked about, this concept a few times, too big to fail. I love it. These companies, these institutions, I think Amazon is only just getting started. There are going to be 7 to 10 of these giants that will rule the world. And they're going to be difficult to dismantle. But here you go. Why are they investing in New Zealand? Why are they putting this data center in New Zealand? Because it's a safe place to be, folks. It's a safe place to put your data. It's a really good quality place for that sort of stuff. And when we're thinking, and I'm talking sort of big picture, global, when you think about real estate and safety and stuff, Andy, folks, I think Australia and New Zealand are going to get some insane attention. I don't think we've seen anything yet when it comes to our property prices over the next 10, 20 years. I'm making a call that certain pieces of unique real estate into the future are going to be desirable. The effects of COVID worldwide and people desiring some safe place to go to because this is going to be fresh in people's mind for the next 2 decades, Australia and New Zealand is going to be right up there, Andy. That's what I think. I think it's going to be there. I think people will have money. They'll spend it. They'll invest. And if our laws aren't too onerous, Australia should take advantage of that. Like New Zealand's taking advantage of this with Auckland. And they have good internet. Shay said they got bloody better internet than Australia.
That might be the one reason. So they probably thought it's probably easier to make our facilities earthquake proof than to provide good internet to Australia.
A place without earthquake. Well, mate, how did you go with the earthquake the other day? It was a little bit of a
give us a shout out if you felt the earth move the other day, in the chat. Be interested to see how far wide we actually saw it. So whack in there if you felt it, the earthquake that is, and whereabouts you are, so we can get a bit of a smattering of of whereabouts at.
Didn't we invent
how
the
far it
internet?
comes.
Well, Michelle, I think we invented silicon chips or something. Australia was pretty good. We were cutting edge for a while, but I think the government sort of
The government put a stop to that.
yeah. Wow, off the what do they say, Andy? You've done this one before. I love it when you pull up those. What are Australia's top 10, companies, and it's banking and mining and farming, and then America, it's like the Silicon Valley, line up, and there's one or two others, but it's an interesting one, and I think Australia's got a lot of opportunity to take advantage of this. And if the government just gets off the crack cocaine that is the real estate market, listen, I'm a massive fan of real estate. I love it, but I think they overindulge and they overinvest in real estate. Personally, I think they should invest in jobs more, in a different way, innovation more. We should have more Atlassians coming out of our country. We should have more.
This is forward-thinking policy, and we were talking about it on the week during the week, and and I don't want to compare us to the US, but when I look at what they're legislating in the US, and I'm not doing this to be contentious, I'm not those Trump lovers or haters or Biden, whatever, don't jump on the high horse right now, because all I'm doing is I'm about to say the type of legislation that the US look to put through Congress is very, very different than the type of legislation that we put through Australia. The type of legislation that we put through Australia is backward looking, trying to fix problems that don't really exist anymore, because by the time they start the royal inquiry, the banks, the movers, they just get out and they go, boom, they see the writing on the walls and they're out. And so by the time they drop the legislation, all they're doing is kicking the living daylights out of the poor Joes who are left. Whereas in the US, at the moment, they're legislating in and around privacy, in and around these massive companies, as to what they're doing with our data, and how, because you put Amazon, Tesla, you put not Tesla, you put Amazon, Facebook, I've got a mental blank, Apple, the top 5 or 6, and they make up
Microsoft. Amazon, Microsoft, Apple.
There's 5 or 6 of them.
We need to be keeping a list, Andy. We've had a few 2 wines already.
Oh, mate, I'm just fatigued from the surf this afternoon, or the kite surfing. But these countries, they are countries. Literally, they have GDPs or their revenues are higher than countries, and combined countries.
Bob nailed it. Yep.
Google. Thank you, Bob. And
how can we forget that one?
Yeah, I'm surprised that my Google Home didn't shout out and go, "Don't forget me."
It was listening, Andy. You got a strike on your name. You know the saying, folks, that you've been on the naughty or nice list. Well, you're on Google's naughty list right now, Andy.
But they're forward legislating for the future, and that's smart. That's actually smart. It's like, let's not legislate for things that have already happened, right? Let's be aware of the things that have happened, and if we do need to make some major changes, let's make some major changes. But quite often, anomalous events happen, and they happen in a cycle. If they went in hard, Jace, and they just went in and went bang and said, what is the legal and what's the illegal activity that's happened here? And when they find the illegal activity, they just cut them off at the knees.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. They're too gutless to do that. So the regulators don't go in and do that quite often. They then put a royal inquiry behind. But anyway, my point here is that when we look at some of the other countries in the world, and I'd urge you to have a look at some of the laws that are being passed globally now, they're forward looking, and it's how do we protect people against these global companies? Because you and I chatted a little while ago that one of my favorite movies is The Fifth Element. And The Fifth Element is a classic
example. You and me both. Love that movie. Yeah.
Of a movie where maybe Jeff Bezos has just an evil little kid who grows up and inherits the empire and then wants to rule the planet. And the idea that would actually be possible is actually quite scary. Mark Zuckerberg just turns into a nasty guy all of a sudden. Some people might say he's nasty already. especially with all the stuff about Instagram that's going on, that they knew that people were getting hooked on it. Now they're trying to get children hooked on it. It's crazy what's going on. But they're legislating forward-looking to try and stop this stuff from happening.
Totally, mate.
And
We were fortunate enough to hang out with and we heard two conversations this past few days from two futurists, and one of those futurists is an Australian guy. I can't remember his name now. If Shay's still listening, maybe she could chuck it in the chat.
I think it's because he's not born yet. I legitimately think he was from the future because he talked about it with so much clarity.
So much clarity. And he was talking about, these giants, the Amazons of the world, the Apples, the Googles, the ownership of our data. Our data is value. Our photos, our information is value. And they're lobbying in a positive way to make our data, these big giants, pay us a fee, an ongoing royalty for the use of our data. And it's a really interesting conversation, mind-blowing. I'm completely doing it an injustice, but
it's a great concept though, Jace, isn't it? It's like, instead of trying to figure out how to tax the company for work that they're doing out here, tax the company for the stuff that they're using that is ours.
Sam Martino, Australian guy, absolutely mind-blowing, and some great, and then Salomon Ismaili. And like, folks, if you haven't looked these guys up, check them out on YouTube. They've got some amazing, talks on YouTube, both mind-blowing. And my point though, to bring those two up, if we flip the switch on this thing, you and I talked about something a little while ago, and one of these guys said this is an industry, a future industry that's going to change the world. And I don't know, folks, do any of you know what just happened, what got announced this week, the past week, for Toowoomba, little old Toowoomba up the hill from Brisbane, Andy?
Toowoomba, I know Toowoomba. I used to skydive out near Esk. So I used to travel through Toowoomba. They had a great little bakery out there, did amazing pies.
Good little town.
Yeah, great little town.
Good little town. Big announcement this week for Toowoomba in Queensland. Folks, does anyone know what it is? I'm sort of holding the space right now before I announce it. Andy, I'll give you a tip. It was mentioned by one of these guys, and you and I have spoken about it once or twice, maybe even 3 times in the last few months, about a technology and industry that they're like, wow, okay, this thing's really here, and probably worth having a little look at. Wow. It's got the flower show, Toowoomba. Yeah, dead right, Alison.
Okay, so I'm thinking about major technologies. I'd be thinking about nanotechnologies. I'd be thinking about robotics. I'd be thinking about blockchain, NFTs.
Little bit more in the robotics world, but I'll put you out of your misery, Andy.
Oh, of course, the military base is out in Toowoomba.
There we go. Boeing building a drone factory out of Toowoomba, and you and I talked about these drones. Boeing is here. Yeah, there you go. Rosita nailed it. Boeing building and putting together a factory out of Toowoomba, out of Brisbane, for these are military drones. But Andy, you and I talked about the future of drone technology.
Yeah. And
one of these guys, I can't remember, I think it was Salomon, talked about the future of drone technology for the world is just it's going to be massive. And I can't remember what the curve was called, but the technology doubling every 3 years or it insane. So there's some pretty interesting things, folks, if we're sort of keeping an eye on these, what we would call, Andy, maybe breadcrumbs or whatever it is, like there's some little bits and pieces for us to observe and pay attention to when it comes to the world of not only maybe some stocks and some companies to invest in the future. But Andy, all of these things ultimately, there's nothing that doesn't need a piece of real estate, and that there's nothing that doesn't need people living around it in homes to service these things, right?
Oh, 100%. And mate, look, even for green applications, I know that they're being used in utilities at the moment, the drones, and as the ability for the comments that they were talking about in regards to, oh God, and Moore's law. It's not Moore's law. It'll come
It
to us
is
in a
Moore's
second.
law. It's Moore's
It is
law.
Moore's law. It is
Yeah,
Moore's
yeah.
law. So the
Yeah.
acceleration of technology,
Yeah.
the comments that they were making was the payload. So every 9 years, the payload of these things is going up exponentially. 9 months, I beg your pardon. Every 9 months, the payload of these things is going up.
It's doubling. I think it was doubling, Andy. I think it was doubling every 9 months.
And it's already able to take, those massive cables from the big super highways of electricity that go through the mountain ranges, those huge things. So they're already able to grab those and drag those and connect them up. So it used to be that you had to drag it through a mountain range. Now, clip it on, goes over the other side, drops it off. You can imagine the manpower that takes out. But even green applications like eradication of pests, so things like Indian minor birds and things like that. And I was thinking maybe you could make a game out of it as well. You could sell it, and you can have little kids at home, and they're going around, and all of a sudden they're taking out all of the species that shouldn't be around in Australia. Please don't get on top of me. I'm just having a bit of a laugh. I'm just having a bit of a laugh.
I don't think that's a good idea.
I'm just having a laugh.
But back in our day, you and I had a pellet gun. We'd shoot the pests. Like one of my first jobs was shooting the birds, the pest birds that would eat the farmers' grapes, because he was trying to.
Mate, you and I are both farmers here, but we're going to get punished if we go down this track.
Yeah.
Really
All right, Andy, you get it back on track.
But imagine that for, cane toads. We'll go to cane toads. Nobody likes the cane toads. They can pick off the cane toads.
Bloody cane toads. Yeah.
The applications of these things are really in every walk of life. Like it's almost limitless.
Yes.
where they could be used. And I think it's exciting. Again, what do you think the biggest brick wall drones are going to face in advancement, in use throughout Australia are going to be? The one thing?
The limiting factor.
The limiting factor, the brick wall.
What's the limiting factor for drone expansion?
It's a pretty strong theme in tonight's Wine and Wisdom, Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Rosita reckons we should have protection drones for magpie season. I think that's a great idea, Rosita.
I'm glad somebody else said it.
I've got some bloody plovers. Andy, did you grow up with plovers?
Mate, we've got them around here. I tell you what, those things, and they start going off their brains at like 2:00 in the morning. And then they sweep you.
Yeah, they're not very intelligent birds, those plovers, but bloody hell, they're down in my cul-de-sac, and we can't even go for a walk without being attacked by the plovers, the buggers. All right, well, we got a few people. Shay reckons airspace law. Michelle reckons privacy and data. Graham's reckons legislation of some description.
Yeah, and look, covering over it, CASA is an old.
CASA, the aviation, what's it called? The
civil
and something or other aviation authority, isn't it, or something?
Yeah. So CASA is been quite slow because the flight industry hasn't progressed that much over the last 50, 60, 70, 100 years, really.
Yeah.
It's remained pretty basic. And for those pilots, you'll know that, at certain altitudes you can go north, and certain altitudes you can go, east west, and that sort of dictates to stop people just from colliding when they're not on radar and when they're flying without radar. But that technology is going to have to smarten up a lot, Jace, a lot. Yep. And you've got a government body that is going to be sitting behind it. And that's going to be one of the things that's really going to put the brakes on this, because the government are not going to be able to keep up with the Civil Aviation Safety Authority. Rosita's all over it.
Nice one, Rosita. Yep, good work. Well, at the end of the day, Andy, it's not drones aren't going to be the only thing, right? So we've got already Elon Musk right now is flying low altitude balloons around, providing internet to everywhere that doesn't have it. You can actually sign up, folks, right now. You can sign up and you can subscribe to Elon Musk's, and I can't remember what it's called. Shay's all over this stuff too. She might even be able to put it in the chat for us. Who knew the love of model airplanes would be useful? You can subscribe to Elon Musk's sort of
true. That's so true. It used to be the geekiest thing that you could ever do was to build a model aeroplane.
Well, there you go. Starlink. Graham nailed it. Starlink. You can sign up to Starlink right now, folks. If you live in sort of regional areas and stuff like that. Basically, Elon says, hey, listen, if you live in the middle of nowhere, you should be able to get internet. And I want to give you fast internet. Here's how it's going to happen. It's already happening right now. And we love this stuff. Yeah, at the end of the day, I love it because all of these things bring a physical element to it. Real estate is required. Andy, you and I talked about logistics real estate going absolutely ballistic. Bananas. And then around that logistics real estate, people who work in those logistics places are going to want to live there. The people don't want to be hours from their work. You think about this stuff, and then you think about those industries that can be virtual or that can be, not at home. Well, one of these guys talked about real estate. A chunk of land, a small distance from a major city, between 1 to 2 hours from major cities, because of the ability to go to the office once a week but work from home, the other 4 days a week. And guess what? Guess where Andy sits? He lives in the Mornington Peninsula, absolutely square smack bang in exactly that piece of real estate. I've got a piece of real estate exactly like that down at Byron Bay, these future bits of wealth and value, I think are pretty interesting to look at,
bringing the Richard Branson pipeline from my property as we speak, Jason. So I can get into the city in 6 minutes.
There you go, mate. You can you can already, if you've got a Tesla, you can already get in a what do they call it? A road train. You can hook up with a lead car, and you can just sit in behind another lead car, and you can literally drive non-stop asleep, because the lead car affects all the other cars, like in the Tesla lineup. There's some amazing stuff.
You better hope that the lead car's not drunk. Otherwise, that could be a bit interesting, couldn't it?
Yes, indeed. Well, there you go. And, Graham and his team, they've already signed up. He's sort of saying, hey, listen, we've already signed up. And they're waiting in Newcastle. So, this thing's interesting, folks. I love a bit of technology. Andy and I are mad keen super nerds anyway. So, this is maybe the theme this week,
And it'd be interesting to know. And if you want to hear more about this stuff, please whack it in the chat, because we will take you through a lot more of this, because Jason and I just love exploring it. But also from an investment perspective, Jason, I fundamentally believe that this is the next. People talk about the technology evolution, and they go, well, we're already mature. We're a pup. Like in comparison to the Industrial Revolution right now, technology ain't even gotten warmed up. Like it's just starting right now. Like it is literally just starting. Yeah. And so from an investment perspective and from a real estate perspective, I would imagine, especially with the types of homes and the types of requirements that people are going to need, this is a space where you need to be hot on, because as the shift changes, one of the things that we don't know how it will impact where the world currently sits as far as the current investments. But what we do know is we can start to see trends start to accelerate. And as we start to see those trends accelerate, then we need to start to think about getting on board with those trends as they're starting to arise. And The challenge is going to be leading right back to that very first point that you brought up in regards to good old Joe, in regards to ASIC and regulation, is that investors would be wise to start to take some notice and start to take some interest and start to be willing to take some of their own bets and back some of their own ideas with some research and with some, good guidance, because you won't be able to find it under the current legislation, the way that the government got it set up. It's so tight that if you advise on fringe things, then you expose yourself to a world full of risk. But if investors are willing to do a little bit of research and jump into some of these leading trends, then I think that that's where the real money will be made in my sector over the next decade. I've almost got no doubt. What it'll be, I don't know, but we're already looking at biotech. We're looking at companies that can do ethical screening through AI, through digital, through numbers, and through words. We're looking at drone technologies and stuff, and it's all fringy stuff. But these are things that we need to be following, because here's the thing, Jace. It's happening in all of our sectors right now.
Yep.
And some of the best intel I get is actually from my clients who go, oh, at school, they're doing this right now. Tell me more. What's going on? Like, okay, how are they implementing it? What are they doing with it? What are the benefits? What are the features of it? Like, how does this make your life easier? And then I'm going back to our managers and going, I think we need to get onto this, because this is making school easier. This is accelerating. And when you look at it, schools around the world, it's like, well, that is a massive impact. And,
well, mate, you and I could wax lyrical all day long about that one, I reckon, with when it comes to, the world of education. And, at the end of the day, mate, let's face it, this acceleration, something that we, call it 2 years ago, we would have thought 15 to 20 years, this kind of behavior for people wouldn't occur, right? Like, and then it's been compressed into 1 to 2 years for a lot of different places and spaces. And, you and I have talked about when money gets locked away and it becomes stale and rotten, it doesn't fuel industries and jobs and the economy. It's meant to go and get out there, and I love, if we can get rid of that stupid legislation which basically, by and large, Andy, it's the fear it's the fear of getting it wrong, or the fear of, taking a little bit of a calculated risk and getting it wrong for the advisors, that locks up trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars for innovation. I personally think, unlocking it is smart for the economy, is smart for everyone's wealth, yeah.
It's like we say, it's who learn from our mistakes. You don't need to legislate them. Learn from them. And buyer beware, don't make the same bloody mistakes that were just on the news, 10 days ago. Maybe don't buy that after it's already trashed. But legislate for the future, and then let's make new mistakes, because ultimately the game of real estate, the game of investing, the game of life is a game where we go out, we expose ourselves to risks that we can tolerate to the level that we can. We make a mistake, and hopefully it's a new one, not an old one, because if you made an old one, there's no value in that.
And more fool you. Don't make a bloody mistake you've already made. You just fix that up. Yeah.
Let's go forward and make new mistakes in the world. And when you said about stale and rotten just then, I know that you've said it a number of times. And mate, you and I, and I'm not going to blow our horns too hard here, but the amount of money that you and I have spent in technology, just the fact that you and I are here in this forum doing what we're doing right now with the Sony A6400, the Elgato key lights, the decks, the ATMs, the amount of technology that's sitting behind Jason and I. Don't worry, there's a fair bit. It mightn't look like a Channel 9 studio just yet, but it's getting there. And in Jason's case, he is absolutely there. And so in stale and rotten, what I'd ask you guys to help us understand is, how many businesses are you operating with, or people that you're taking advice from? How many of their approaches to the world now are stale and rotten? Because I think about that, and I think about other firms in my world, Jace, who aren't trying to use technology, who aren't spending money in this sort of stuff, who are operating in the old world, keeping the profit margins high, but it's stale and it doesn't help the end consumer.
Doesn't help anyone, mate. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Graham just brought up a prime example in my world, Andy. PEXA. This is the this was going to be, decades in the making and literally happened in 12, 18 months. This is the registration, the digital, tracking of property ownership in Australia. It's digital now. It was going to take decades, and literally, boom. And it's mind blowing that it was only going to take decades because there was no will to get it done. Right? There just wasn't any will to get it done.
Mate, there's a lot behind this here as well, because stamp duty is collected by the State Revenue Office, and you need a wet signature in order for all of that to get processed. But as soon as the State Revenue Office was having trouble getting wet signatures on board, do you think that their motivation in order to be able to have
all right, then we're going to do it.
We're in. We're broke. So let's.
But Andy, like you said, even what you just said, the concept of a wet signature, which means fuck all, right? Which, I mean, this bullshit that is literally 300 years old in law. 300 years old, right?
Jeez,
we are not
older as well. I would have thought.
Yeah, like it. I mean, fuck, it could be 1,000 years old. It's bullshit in this day and age to be stuck there. Do you know what I mean? And it's just crazy. It's crazy, which is mad. So, Michael, investing, $1 million in a CRM to develop a business model. That money's not going physically anymore, Andy. It's going into this digital inspiration space. This reach that this stuff can have now. the transformation. You've said it, and actually, I was going to bring this one up. I might bring it next week. The speed now where people can get access to money, lending, will transform. And I still think it's a bit of a, there we go. Graham's onto it. Actually, just took the words right out of my mouth. The fucking lenders are dragging their feet, right? Which they shouldn't. They should be the ones at the cutting edge of this thing. And Andy, you and I talked about this. We might put a pin in this one for another time. But
it's a good conversation, because it goes to dividends, it goes to where they're
to
investing their money.
Yep. So we'll put a pin on that one, Graham. I think you've got us on that one.
Because you're onto something. There's a rabbit hole right there, Graham, and it's a 4-hour rabbit hole.
Let's go on down that rabbit hole.
That Jason and I have been crawling around for a little while, and
absolutely.
we're all over it.
And last but not least, like I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of what's going to go on in Queensland. Boeing, more jobs, Olympics, big stuff. So, I think that one will keep rolling, folks. But that's the real estate game. It gets a bit of momentum, and some good news is great news. But Shay reckons don't get us started on that one. Well, yep, you're dead right.
But just and maybe as we come to a close on tonight, the Boeing example is a classic example of what needs to be happening in our country, Jace, is that if we have a look at this graph here, so this we spoke about last week, and this is talking about the earnings per share. So effectively, it's the company revenue expectations, or the realized revenue based on previous years. So the S&P 600, right, is in the green.
Yep.
The growth is in the purple. Now, the 600 is made up of a fair bit of the growth stocks, but if we were to have a look at growth versus value, so purple versus red, 40% earnings per share growth. So 40% growth for the shareholders expected in 2022 versus 2019. Now, what that means is Boeing. Boeing is a growth stock. as an example, because it's
Yeah.
technology. It's going for the future. It's reinvesting into the technology for the future. And I guess as I bring the themes of of what we've been talking about tonight, the drone technology, all of these various different technologies that ultimately are where the world is going to be in the future. It's already showing up on balance sheets. It's already showing up on revenue, and people are saying that this stuff is a bubble, and it might be a bubble in consumer staple things like Amazon, right? So Amazon may not grow as aggressively, but then you've got your Boeings, you've got your drones, you've got all of these biotech sectors that are going to start to travel. And here's the big thing is that in Australia, if we don't start getting more Boeings, if we don't start getting more Amazon's out to Australia,
Yeah,
if we
why
don't
didn't
get those,
Australia get the Amazon contract? Like what is with that, folks? Yeah,
that's where we need to play, because if we play in the value game, we will get eaten up and we won't progress.
yeah, mate, dead right, mate. Well, mate, plenty of wine, 1 or 2 drops of wisdom.
A whole lot of technology.
Yeah, but mate, always a pleasure to hang out with you and chew the fat, mate, on a Friday night. Certainly, folks. I reckon if Andy and I are only just getting started, and I've only had a second glass of wine, so I reckon we could crack on, Andy. But we won't keep you guys. Fabulous for hanging out on a Friday. Thank you, folks. Yeah, we want to see some stretching. We want to see some stretching, Andy. Get out of the chair, Andy.
I'm not sure whether it's possible, Michelle. My body is absolutely cactus. I can tell you, I'm going to be in pain for days. But appreciate that. It'd be very entertaining.
There you go. Sounds like Sean's a Queenslander. He said plenty of 4X. If that's 4X as in the beer, Sean, cheers to you, my friend. Growing up in a 4X household, but I've got the live call, folks. We have pizza Friday night at the Witten House. Pizza's in the oven. My love has already started the process, which is very nice of her, and good to hang out, my friend. Great to hang out with you guys, folks. Thanks for being here. Always fun, and you guys be well. Take care. So it's a good night from me.
Yeah, that's a good night from him.
Good night. See you, folks.